Welcome back to the Maximum Lawyer Podcast. I'm Jim Hacking. Oh, Tyson, I'm glad we're recording today. I'm glad we're doing this episode. We have a very special guest who's going to walk us through some issues when it comes to building out your CRM, mistakes that lawyers make, and all the kinds of things that you need to be thinking about if you're trying to take your firm to the next level as it relates to keeping track of potential clients, and in fact, even building out your operations. His name is Rob Petrie. He's with
So Rob, tell us
Setco
about
Partners
how
in
you got into
the
this
Great
business, a
White
little
North,
bit about your journey
Wisconsin,
that brings
Minnesota.
you to
Rob
today.
and I worked together this last, all last year, worked building out Salesforce for us. So Rob, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it. Sure. So I've been working with Salesforce my entire professional career, about 13 years. Did some in-house work for rapidly growing software companies for the first half of my career, and then got into consulting in a selling role about 7, 8 years ago. Always working with Salesforce. So did a few years, kind of found a company that was willing to take a shot on me, teach me how to sell, fell in love with it. And then right around when COVID happened, took the leap and started my own firm with my partner, Tom, and we've been able to grow it ever since. So it's been a fun, fast-paced journey. I've learned a lot, but we're up to 22 employees right now, growing pretty quickly and kind of figuring it out as we go along.
When I tell people that we made the switch to Salesforce, when I talk to law firm owners, their eyes sort of get really big like this, and they're like shocked. They think that Salesforce is for like McDonald's or big sales companies or big corporations. When do you think that people should start thinking about Salesforce as a realistic options as far as what stage of growth?
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly biased given the nature of my business, but it is a very big misconception that Salesforce is not intended to be used by small, medium-sized business. I would say 75% of the work we do is with companies with 150 employees or less. And I'm a big believer in the crawl, walk, run approach. So
If you're used to the crawl,
Jim,
walk, run
my response
approach,
would be
then it
right
must have been a
away. I don't think
nightmare
you necessarily
working
need
with
to
Jim
do
because he's
everything right
the
away or
run
obsess over it
approach,
right away.
and
But
then abandon ship and choose some other stuff.
I think it's a very appropriate tool when you're starting a business or when you're getting serious about operations to try and put it in place right away. Well,
Yeah,
it's
so
that's funny you say that.
I
There's
do
a
want to
little
talk
bit
about
of
that.
that, but
So
I would
let's
say
jump right in because
Jim
you
crawled
worked
and
with
walked
Jim.
with other
Let's
systems, so he
walk us
came
through what
in
the process was
very
with
educated and
Jim so
very
people
aware
have
of
an
the
idea.
challenges
Because
of a
I know
project like this.
he and I have
So,
talked about it a lot on
and
the
we like
pod,
that.
but
It's
I'd
easy
love
to
to hear
work with
from
firms
you,
that have kind of
your
been through it
perspective as
before.
to
So,
what process
um,
you put him through, the firm through, so that you could build out what they needed.
Sure. So for a project like Jim's, where we're replacing a system that's maintaining business as usual, there's a heavy amount of investment in the analysis and design phase. So it's a lot of process work. It's a lot of theoretical scenarios, kind of talking through not only how are you doing it today, but I think in a perfect world, challenging, do you need to do it that way? Is there value in doing it that way? A system change like this is a really nice excuse to relook at things and rethink things. And, oftentimes you're surprised by how many opportunities there are to simplify or speed things up. So we spent, I would say, Jim, 3, 4 months maybe in that process, making sure we had a rock solid understanding of the workflow and the flow of data through the process before, we broke ground and really started building. And the whole idea there is to not kind of build as you go, to make sure we're on the same page. We're making Jim and his team aware of the decisions they need to make and the impact those decisions have on the build, the cost, how it's going to look and feel when it's rolled out. But, ideally, once you set the stage right, you're all on the same page. The building is the easier part. And I feel that was the case in your project, Jim, but I'd be curious to get your feedback.
Well, we had a real cast of characters sort of building us out. So Rob gave us a great project manager named Jody Gilroy, and she was fantastic at slowing us down. And on our side, we had Jim, Adela, and Kelsey, and we are all pretty much, let's jump in and get going, And I remember early on, I was talking to Rob, I think even before we signed the contract, about how we currently did things. And you just sort of pushed back and said, well, why do you do it that way? And why do you have to keep doing it that way? And so for us, just the process of having a fresh set of eyes and people who are project oriented, because we were always, like you said,
Is it
Tyson,
my
run,
question,
run, run,
Jimbo?
as
I think it's
opposed to
your. Oh,
being
is it? Okay. I
methodical.
didn't know if it
So
was.
slowing down and mapping it
We, by
out,
the way,
even though
Rob,
to
we,
me
we
it felt like a
alternate
pain,
questions, so that's how we
was
normally do
really,
it.
really
So,
helpful. And I think it helped us get
yeah.
to where we wanted to be. So with that being said, and looking at the mistakes that people make when they think about building their software, obviously this is one of them, not necessarily spending enough time in the design stage. And it was really unpacking our processes and figuring out how to replicate that in Salesforce. What other mistakes do you see business owners or law firms make when they want to design, quote unquote, the perfect system?
Yeah, I think there's a few of them. One of the biggest mistakes we make, we encourage our clients to solve for the happy path. What that means to us is get it 90% of the way there and don't necessarily obsess over the 10% that may not fit into the happy path. It's amazing how that last 10% can blow up the cost and timeline of a project. And sometimes business owners get into a mode of, well, that's the whole reason we're doing it is for that 10%. They forget about the impact the 90% is going to have. So we encourage people to solve for the happy path. I think the other thing too is just socializing it and making the team aware of not only the fact that this is happening, but why it's happening. Jim, your firm, I've said this to you, did one of the best jobs we've ever seen in change management. Very early in the project, you were launching and speaking about an internal campaign to educate the team on Salesforce, explain why it was coming, but almost kind of preset the tone of, hey, this is happening, so get on board and get ready for it. Sometimes we see business owners who get into it but may not be all in, and I think your team can sense that hesitation. And you're going to have people on every side of the spectrum involved in these projects: detractors, people who want things to stay the same, and then people who are really excited about it. The more hesitancy people sense from leadership, the more those voices start to get elevated and louder when projects get challenging. So I think getting in front of it, socializing, educating your team as to the why, that's another big thing we encourage people to do. And when owners don't do that, I think it's a mistake.
Yeah, for sure. And so we definitely wanted to get buy-in with the team. It wasn't particularly hard because we were having some pains with the software that we had. So we definitely sort of pushed that pain point and highlighted those issues that people were having. Let's talk about the time period after the design is done, or after the research is done and the investigation phase. You're switching to design, and then that launch period. Because you and I have talked about other situations you've had, and I know you had one client who kept putting off their launch. And can we talk about the importance of version one ideation, and what are the things you tell
I think I
clients?
caught the end of the question, just the importance of the launch and go live. Um, it it so it the go live phase and getting ready for go live, it happens in kind of a couple of phases. So there's the data cleanup and the data migration. So eventually the foundation's built, you got to get the data in. And then there's UAT testing. So we are very big believers and proponents of thorough testing. I always tell people, we want you to break the system. I'd rather you break it now than break it when your team is live and trying to go about their day jobs with it. But preparing for go live is something we as a firm are still trying to get better at. Go lives are hard because people are going to wake up one day and everything they're used to doing is changing. So I think one thing that made the hacking group unique with Adela, with Kelsey, with yourself, Jim, you're very technical. So you were involved in the build. You took ownerships of certain components of the build. You understood the ins and outs of the system. Not every business has those resources available or those skill sets available. So for our typical client, we're encouraging them as much as they can to sit down and spend time in the system before the go live. If things don't make sense, we always say if you have a question, everyone else is going to have the same one. make sure it makes sense, make sure it's obvious how it's supposed to work, break it, find the bugs, so that when we get into training, go live is as smooth as possible. And then I always say, expect, the first couple of weeks are going to be hard. It starts up here. It's impossible to get rid of every bug, think of every scenario. But if you can kind of press
So,
through those
Rob,
first two to
about a
three
year ago,
weeks,
I read
it really
the
starts to
book
kind
"A
of
World
level
Without
out.
Email"
People
by
get
Cal
used to it,
Newport.
and they
Amazing
start to
book.
ideally see the benefits
And
of the change.
I'm curious
So those
about
first
like
2 weeks
design
are tough.
principles because
They're
there's a lot of
always
things
tough.
like with that
But
book where
getting to
like you
kind of
want
that
everything in
third,
one
four
place, right? You
week
don't want to go
with your head
looking for
still
it. You
held
want it to be
high
right there whenever you
is
need it.
important.
Is some of the concept ideas. So I wonder how much of that you're guiding the customer through the process, and how much of it they're telling you what they want. Because I'm sure there's a lot of ideas that you get from customers where they want certain things, and you're kind of thinking, no, you probably don't want that, and here's why. So can you talk about that aspect of things?
Yeah, my business analysts are going to watch this and kind of laugh at the idea of me speaking about design principles. I'll admit that that is not necessarily what I spend all day doing. I think some of the core themes though is we try to take a user story based approach. So for your typical client that isn't a database expert, don't focus on how it's going to look and the technology of it. Focus on what you want it to do. So I need this tool to show me this data when I log into a page and look at hacking immigration law firm. I want to see these 6 pieces of information. Great. Don't worry about the how, or don't worry about the technology aspect of it. Focus on the want. And ultimately, it's our job to marry the business needs and business requirements then to the actual deployment. Salesforce is an intimidating tool if you've never seen it before. We spend a lot of time turning things off, getting rid of things, trying to clean it up so that you're not seeing 10 things when you only need access to 2 things. So that's another thing. These tools are so powerful. They do so many things, but for your typical 25 employee small business, you only need 20-30% of the tool if it's your first go around with the CRM. So less is more for sure. Simplicity is important. And then again, just trying to focus on in the design phase, you don't have to worry about how. We'll figure out the how. You tell us what you need, and we'll figure out the best way to do it.
One of the things that drew us to Salesforce was the ability to build the operations piece, that it's not just the CRM handling in leads. Talk about the power of Salesforce and sort of why you thought it was a good solution for us.
Yeah, Salesforce is almost like inappropriately named now. It obviously made sense when the company started, but it's a business operations platform. And there's not just your CRM, there's a full suite of 15 to 20 different tools and modules. I run my entire business on Salesforce, with the exception of we use QuickBooks to push out invoices. Um, it's a platform. So that's both a blessing and a curse. I think it's a blessing because we have a lot of small businesses that are aware of what it costs. They think it can do one thing, and we're able to say we can actually build more on it, and you're paying for the tool already, so you might as well maximize it. But it's also a curse because the question with Salesforce is not can we do it. 99% of the time, the answer is yes. It's is there enough ROI to justify the time, energy, cost, effort in doing that. So that's where it gets hard because, especially as a seller, like sometimes I feel weird. People ask, "Can I do this? Can I do this? Can it do this?" Am I?
What are
Oh
some things
yes,
that people
yes, it
think that
can.
they
It,
really,
it,
really
it
need,
can.
but they
And
really, really
sometimes
don't
you
need
just
them?
want to
Like,
say
have you
no
ever
to
like
build
thought about
trust,
that?
so you don't come off as the yes man in the sales process. But um, Salesforce can handle almost anything. The question is it worth whatever it's going to cost to build it there? So, blessing and a curse. Yeah, it's very common for people to ask for integrations to other systems, and Salesforce is fully capable of pushing and pulling data to and from other systems. I think it's an ask because it sounds cool and people think they need it, but then you always follow it up with, well, what do you need it for? And when you can get people to have a dialogue about it, sometimes people are asking us to build expensive integrations for something they do 1 to 2 times a week, and it takes them 5 minutes to do. Um, so I think integrations to other systems, we do a lot of integration work. It's high value work when there's a need for it, but challenging the how many times a day are you doing this? How long does it take? Is it really going to save you enough time to, justify building the integration? That's a big one.
Let's talk about dealing with two types of people: design engineers, people that are building Salesforce, and lawyers. They're generally two very different sort of mindsets and approaches, or just even business owners. Like, how does your team handle dealing with non-technical people and bringing them together to build something cool?
Jim, can you finish your question? Sorry, you cut out.
Yeah, so when you have those sort of two different types of people, business owners or law firm owners and engineers, project managers, how do you get them to talk to each other to build something cool?
Yeah, it's hard, and I think it's harder because I love all types of people and enjoy talking to all different personality types. And there's a little bit of when we get out of the sales process, now you're meeting the team you're paying for and the team you're going to build a partnership with. The first thing I try to do is assess personalities, and sometimes I'll just come out and say, assuming everyone is equally as capable, what do you want personality type in a consultant? What's important to you there? I think a big part of it is having solid project managers and business analysts on the front end of the project. Naturally, those types of people are social. They're warm. They're inviting. They're almost salespeople in and of themselves. But then our developers, on the flip side of that, the traditional developer is stereotypically introverted, and they're not the client facing resources. So trying to put a translator in the middle of them, and ultimately we'll get to the point where everyone knows everyone and it's comfortable and we can get them on a
Jim, do we
call.
have
But
enough time to keep
for those
going?
first several weeks,
Okay,
kind of
just wanna
having
make
that
sure.
point person translate what
All right,
the
so
team at Hacking is saying to
one of the
us,
things,
and
like, we're
then
in the middle of a build
turn
out
it around
ourselves,
and
right?
translate
We're
it
on the
into the
back end of it.
information our more technical
We're at
teams
the
need.
implementation
I think is
phase
a
of it, and
big part of
one of my major
what we do.
concerns is how AI might disrupt everything that we're doing. So, I guess, what are your thoughts towards AI, and how can we prepare to implement those things into our systems? I'm assuming that Salesforce has some sort of plan to implement AI into the system. So, walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, so like all tech companies, Salesforce is pretty much all in on AI right now, and the marketing materials out there, and they're talking about it constantly. They have released this year their first version of like generative AI features, um, and we as partners are trying to kind of catch up to it. So internally at Setco, we're on the tail end of what we called an AI cohort. Our director of enablement, Beverly, put together a 12-week program to try and figure out exactly the question you just asked, kind of what is it, how does it work, where's the value for our clients today, where do they expect it to go. I am eagerly awaiting the results of that cohort. What I can say now is when ChatGPT was released and everybody heard about it and everybody started playing it around, I feel like that was the first time the general population got a taste of what AI could do. Now that it's been a year plus with the tool out, I think we all see the cracks in it and some of the weaknesses of it, but you can apply that concept when you put something into ChatGPT and you look and you're like, oh my gosh, that response is 95% of the way I would write it or what I wanted to know. Salesforce is trying to find those parts of your process, not to get rid of the human beings, but to get them doing higher value things. So if you're going to send a customer support email that you don't just want to be, hey, thanks for reaching out, your case is closed at this time, bye, see you later, but hey, thanks for reaching out to us, here's a summary of what happened, the resolution path. Salesforce would like to get it to a point where you click a button and 95% of that email is written, so you can go back to resolving complex customer issues. So I don't see it as scary as some people think. but I'm also in tech, so I think it's kind of cool.
I
But
was agreeing with you.
it's not
Yeah, I think that's a
in
good way to end
its
it. So,
current
all right,
state, a
Rob. Well,
job killer. I
yeah.
think it's intended to be a job enhancer.
Say it again, Jim. You're cutting out. Yeah. All right, Rob. So we are going to start to wrap things up. Before I do, I'm going to give you a chance. Well, if people want to reach out to you and potentially work with you or just ask you questions, how do they get in touch with you?
Can get to the tip or hack. Sorry.
Love it. Very good. All right. So if for everyone that is interested in getting more information from Maximum Lawyer, go to
Either
search
connect with
Maximum
me
Lawyer
on
on Facebook.
LinkedIn
You
or
want to join
shoot
us
me an
in the
email
big group.
at
You want to join us at one of our quarterly masterminds, go to maxlawguild.com. We would love to see you there. And while you're listening to the rest of this episode, if you don't mind stopping for a moment and giving us a 5-star review, we would greatly appreciate it. Jimmy, what is your hack of the week?
I don't know exactly how to define this hack, but we have brought back our intake team morning meetings. We just talk for 15 minutes about what's going on with the software or intake or any issue. Like today, we did just some training on how to handle objections. When you listen to the team talking about their jobs, you will hear things that surprise you. Even if you think you have it all dialed in, even if you think everybody's doing things the same way, if you listen to what they say, you'll hear things that might surprise you. So I had an intake specialist talk to me about how it slipped out of her mouth the other day. She's supposed to be sitting at a computer.
I like getting those little tidbits.
I sort of like getting the slack before I get a transfer because if I'm in the kitchen or something, then I can run to the computer. I was like,
a hack,
what?
It could be a book, it could
My eyes went like this. So
a podcast, could be
just
a
having
quote,
that dialogue. There's
it.
lots of value to the dialogue, but one of the things is that people might just surprise you. You might be able to fix things.
Yeah, so I, as a business owner, and like I said, I run my entire business on Salesforce, people are always surprised to hear me say, I have a laundry list of improvements I wish we could make to our Salesforce org, and to me, it's just a question of what do we want our team working on? Our systems are our clients. So my hack of the week is to kind of do what I do. When you notice inefficiencies in your process, in your system, just write them down. I have a notepad right next to me and I'll go, this takes forever, and I'll move on. And when it comes back the next week and I do it again, I start doing tally marks. So I try to keep a running list of all of the inefficiencies I see in my business, but more importantly,
really
how frequently am I frustrated about them?
For my tip,
and when you start to get those
book,
high tally things, you start
Spy the
socializing
Lie.
it.
It's
Does anyone
by
else see
some
this
former
issue?
CIA
You start
officers,
to see where
and
the
it's really
priorities
cool.
really are. So
the authors are Philip
keep a list on
Houston,
your desk and
Michael
hit it with
Floyd,
the
and then
tally every
Susan
time it comes up in real life.
Carson-Sero. But there's something that was near the beginning of the book. It's like in the second chapter where they talk about, and like this is like the baseline, but like if you can get past this, like you can be much better at spying lies. And it's understanding that you have a natural tendency as a human to believe what another person's saying. Like you will go out of your way to believe what that person's saying, even if logically none of it makes sense. You just because out of comfort alone, you'll go out of your way to believe the person. And so this is really helpful for me when it comes to things like depositions and in court. But like who knows, talking to employees, talking to vendors, negotiating a new car purchase, like things like that, where you just have that basic understanding. You can kind of set your comfort aside to objectively look at everything else around it. So it's a really good tool. So I recommend it. But the book is amazing, is really good. I wouldn't say it's amazing. It's a really good book to pick up on things like that. But I highly recommend it. Rob, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. I know that Jim's has been saying a lot of good things about you and is really excited to use their new platform. So thanks so much for coming on and sharing a little bit.